Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode from the Altengrad city in City Skylines. Last time we were in the city, we focused on the northwest part, where we started building a town which formed an edge of the city. It still needs to be expanded, although it's mostly some medium to low density residential stuff, maybe some industrial areas closer to the harbor. I'm already in the process of doing all that. Don't worry, I did not forget about this part, but I just wanted to try something else for a change. So today we will move to the opposite end of the city and do something about the unfinished railway connections to the main train station, as well as some city expansion around it. So let's go. We're going to start with the railway that's going from the main train station, and I'm going to make it go towards the river, where I'll build a new bridge and also a connection to these lower tracks. Now, those are the tracks that go from the terminus station. So after I'm done with this junction, we're going to have all the railway networks from the city connected into one system. So, that's going to be nice. Now, this bridge is not really going to be all that important. It's just a nice opportunity to test some new networks, or, old networks that I haven't used yet. For example, this steel elevated segment, which is looking perfect for this kind of a bridge. It's definitely suited for these tall railroad bridges, so I'm quite happy how this one looks. But on the surface, it's much better to use some of these stone arches like I do in here. Obviously, I need to fiddle with them a bit so that the arches exactly fit all the networks that are going to be underneath it. Now I'm going to create a connection for the lower tracks, and as you can see, I'm using a slightly different method than you are probably used to from some of these videos. So I'm using these circles. Now, why am I doing that? Well, first of all, I want to have some constant radii for these curves. It's not really necessary from realistic point of view, but it's just going to look much better when this stuff is finished. And also, these procedural object circles are actual circles. Now, when you create using the curve tool, something, I'm not sure how it's called, the tools in the game, if you create like a roundabout, for example, so a complete circle, then you will notice that it's not really perfectly circular. Someone explained this to me on the live stream, that the game calculates some like a parabolic curve, something that resembles a circle, but it's not really a circle. And it's especially noticeable with like sharper turns, right? And bigger curves, obviously, like higher radii. So it's much better if you want to have like cleaner railways, like I do, to just copy some like actually circular shapes. So procedural objects are obviously perfect because you can just scale those objects to whatever radius you need. So that's exactly the reason why I was doing those circles. And it's also much more convenient because you don't really need to calculate anything. You don't need to pay attention to anything. You just, slap the circle somewhere and just, copy its outline, and that's it. So it's very, very easy and kind of fast to do it. Even though on the live stream I fiddled with this for like 5 hours, but that's not really important right now. So I created that viaduct along the river. It's a very nice, like an S-shaped curve with the railway. It follows, I think, like 1% grade, so it's fine for passenger railway, and it's just looking very nice. We are kind of going to leave that area though. I just wanted to have that infrastructure done. I have to admit I wanted to at first do some different projects for today, but it was kind of too disconnected from the main city and not exactly something I wanted to continue with. So we are going to move somewhere else slightly. As you can see, I created a tunnel entrance for a different railway that's also going towards the main train station. And there's like a triangle junction in here, which is definitely not going to be finished after today. It's just something that I really wanted to have here. Now, this step in here is absolutely crucial. It's super important that I did this. Now, at first, I had the terrain lower than the railway over here, and I kind of planned on building a viaduct much longer than the one that I did and pretty much make it go all the way from the river to the train station. But it would have been a bit boring, right? There would be nothing really interesting to it, so there would be just, a viaduct. We already did that in the city, on the opposite edge of the city, and some buildings around it, nothing all that interesting. So, I decided why not actually make some roads go over the railway and make it actually cut into the terrain, apart from going over it on some bridge. So that's exactly what I decided for this connection over the railway with those tram roads. Now this tram road goes towards that big park, and the big park is having like a very uniform geometry, and I also wanted to have some of these roads go from the park, with that geometry, so respecting that geometry. So this road is going perfectly straight all the way over these tracks. Now this is probably going to be some main road. I'm later going to emphasize that slightly by making the sidewalk much wider, by placing the buildings not really all the way next or right next to the roads, but slightly further apart. I'm also using these very nice new networks. I think these are part of the arcade collection made by Revo recently. There are these arcades. There are these like retaining walls and some of these modular networks, all kinds of networks that are very nice for creating some of these more like urban connections for railways. Later, I'm actually going to use like a viaduct piece for some portions of this build, but these are just looking very nice. These retaining walls, they are especially suited for this exact purpose. Now, I'm kind of struggling with some of these roads again, because it's been a long time actually since I've built like a proper tram junction, or intersection. So I was not exactly sure how these custom networks work, even though, I made them, but I figured it out anyway in the end, and we finally have a nice tram intersection, and it goes nicely over the railway as well. As you can see, using some fake surfaces for the bridge going over the railway, and I decided to have the bridge go like perpendicularly to the railway, even though the actual road on top of it is not perpendicular to the railway. But it kind of makes sense. Like from engineering point of view, it's a lot easier to create like a perpendicular bridge. Sure, it's wider, but at the same time, it's not like a wasted space, because it's, like I said, it's like a main street. So it's definitely going to be used all the part. And there's actually going to be a tram stop right on top of it. So, it makes sense that it's wider like that. This is just a nice opportunity overall. This entire like terraforming stuff that I'm doing here, creating this elevated part for the city above the railway, it's just a nice opportunity to create something interesting. Because like I said, I didn't really want to have just a train viaduct going all the way from the main train station all the way to the river, because it would just leave the entire place flat. And, what else? What am I going to build there? Just some blocks of buildings? I don't really want to do that. I mean, in the end, it's definitely going to be filled with buildings of various kinds, but it would definitely be interesting if there was some terrain differences. So I can work with that, maybe make some curved roads like that I did, for example, right there, just in here. Yeah, you can see it right here. And like I said, it's just going to make it more interesting. And it's also going to be a nice opportunity to use different assets. Like I said, for example, these arcades, this viaduct in here, just a short one, and on the opposite side in the trench, those are going to be the retaining walls and some procedural objects around it. All kinds of different stuff that I can use here and just make this place more interesting. So down here, this is going to be basically the junction area, the triangle junction area. And I was really thinking of making this into a more industrial place, because it's not exactly going to be a very good address for like a residential building, because I made it into like a little dip in the terrain. It's just going to be surrounded by much more elevated terrain. So not exactly a good view from this area. So it makes sense that it's going to be filled with some residential buildings, some workshops, but mostly like warehouses and stuff. And it's just going to look all right. And it's, again, going to be something different than just blocks of buildings that I don't really want to use absolutely everywhere, even though we are somewhat close to the downtown still. So I'm just going to place a couple of these warehouses and workshops in here, but I'm not really going to finish this area because I'm not yet sure how I'm going to treat that whole hill or the elevation that continues from this place. That's where the tunnel entrance is. I'm thinking that the entire tunnel entrance area is just going to be just surrounded with trees or something. I'm not really going to expand the city in that direction too much. That was indicated already by that street that I just did there. I tried to use like a very low, short buildings, low density buildings, and from here towards the edges of the city, I definitely want to use even lower density buildings, like detached houses and stuff like that. Maybe even some like wooden houses or something. I'm not sure. Basically something that I already did on the opposite end of the city when I did that little town, when I started that little town. That kind of leads me to probably explaining why I'm not really finishing that little town, but continuing this new project. I just wanted to try something else. That's it. I was kind of bored of just filling those empty blocks with some low density stuff, so I just wanted to really try something else. This was actually a direct continuation of the live stream that I did, and for the live stream I wanted to start yet another project in this area. It was supposed to be like an industrial zone closer to the river, closer to the tracks, connected to the tracks. But then I decided I don't really want to do that because it's a bit too disconnected from the city. It's too far away from the city. And I wanted to go a bit closer and just, continue expanding the actual downtown, let's say, even though this is probably the edge of it anyway. So what are we going to do today is not going to be directly connected to the city, but hopefully some next projects are going to tie everything together, and we are going to have quite a serious city expansion going on in this part of the map. So right now I'm just working on the trench. As you can see, I'm creating some pedestrian overpasses over it. I don't really want to have that many connections going over it. I just want to have it so that it really cuts through the area and it's looking like it's not really belonging in there, because that's probably how it was constructed in the first place, if this was real life, of course. Now, in City Skylines, I usually try to create the networks first and then do the buildings around it, because it's much easier. The networks are going to give you an idea how it needs to be and how it probably needs to look like when it's finished. The overall picture is much easier to picture when you have the networks done. But in real life, it was the other way around, of course, especially for railways and especially for old European cities like this one. So you had the city and suddenly there was a railway and or trains in general. And you had to make a train station somewhere close to the downtown of the city, which meant that you had to make way for the railway. And in some places, in some districts, it was actually quite a painful process because you had to destroy some buildings to actually clear a path for it. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do in here. I'm trying to make it look like this place was, not completely, but some buildings and some streets, especially streets, were already present in this area. And the railway basically cut through them, like literally cut them away from this place. So that's, for example, the case with that pedestrian overpass in here. There probably used to be a street, but it was cut by the railway, and there was not enough motivation, I guess, not enough money to build like a proper road bridge over there. So at least they created like a simple wooden, probably like a walk path over that portion. But the main street that was further up with the tram, that was obviously a different matter. That was probably already way too important to leave out. So a bridge was definitely necessary. I'm kind of trying to also reflect this situation by some of the building positions, especially from this view on the left side of the trench. I tried to make a block that's not really closed because maybe the railway actually goes straight through like a line of buildings. Well, not right now, but it would have went through a line of buildings, probably some low rise, maybe even wooden buildings at that point, who knows. Some of these structures are definitely much more recent, maybe like late 19th century buildings, something like that. So they were already built respecting the railway. So some of them are kind of built so that they are even aligned with the railway and stuff like that. So it's definitely not like the oldest part of the city or anything like that, but there might have been already some buildings present in this area. So this entire place is obviously going to need some detailing, some kind of retaining walls, especially underneath the railway, like I'm doing here. Some surfaces to cover every irregularities and all those kinds of things. So that's obviously where procedural objects come in handy, like this. It was actually very difficult. You can't really see it right here, but this was actually very difficult to do because the railway is having like a 1% grade or something like that. So I can't make this detailing completely flat and just put it everywhere underneath the railway. I need to make sure that it's going to respect that grade, and that's not exactly all that simple. I have to make sure that all of these procedural objects are, kind of just tiny bit adjusted for that. Doing some of these just details to fill some of these blocks. Again, I didn't really play Altengrad for a long time, and I always forget how difficult it is to select buildings for some of these blocks. So it's always a welcome opportunity to just do something different for the blocks. Either just slap like a industrial building here and there, which I kind of did over there, or cut the blocks with the railway. That's always a nice idea to just change the monotoneness of the entire building process of these blocks. So always a nice thing to do. Anyway, after I'm done with these surfaces, all that's left is some detailing. So detailing the inner blocks, like lots of decals, especially mud, dirt everywhere, props, fences, street lamps, some other street detailing and stuff like that. But trees are going to be especially important for today's project because I need to use trees to hide some gaps between the terrain, some of the walls, fake surfaces and stuff like that. So that's going to be especially important right here. This retaining wall and the road next to it are both inclined, which means I can't really use a flat, grass blocks or grass plates like these because they wouldn't fit, obviously. I would have to fiddle with it quite a lot. It would take a long time. So instead, I'm just going to cover everything with trees, every kind of gap, every kind of, ugliness. I'm just going to detail it away with some of these decals, but especially trees. That's something that I'm definitely going to do even in the future because some of the stuff that I was trying to get rid of in terms of like small details here and there, it took a really long time, unnecessary amount of time. So I definitely want to do the approach of just hiding stuff that I don't necessarily need to like properly detail, right? It's something that I should probably not even mention because now you're going to focus on these little details, but hopefully not. It's hardly noticeable anyway. One last thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm recording the videos, the time-lapse videos, I'm recording them in 20% game speed. You can see that in the bottom left corner on that speed slider that I'm having it at 20% right now. I was always having it at 40, but I decided to go for 20. Now, the reason for that is the camera movement is going to be way slower for me when I'm playing it, but it's obviously going to be even slower for the time-lapse. So that's going to make it more comfortable to watch, hopefully. I can already see the difference. You can try it for yourself, watch some older videos, probably the previous video, and this one, and see if the camera movement is smoother. It should be, and it should be, like I said, more comfortable for you, for viewers. So that's something that I'm going to be doing from now on. I can't really go lower because the game is way too slow at that point, even though I have seen video made by Press and he was using 10%. I'm not really sure how he manages to really, deal with the fact that the game is already super slow and it's virtually impossible to just go anywhere on the map with the camera because it just takes so long. But that time lapse with the 10% looked even better. It looked really, really good. So I decided to settle on 20%. It's like a compromise. And like I said, I can already see the difference. So hopefully it's going to be more comfortable for you as well. I think I already mentioned it. Maybe it's also apparent from some of these time-lapse shots, but it's definitely going to be apparent from the cinematics that this project, this city block that we are doing in here, is going to be disconnected from what's already built towards the downtown. So there's lots of empty areas between this part and the city, That's we already finished. Now we are very close to the big city park, the big rectangular park that we did a long time ago actually. But I have a special project in mind for a place right next to the park, which I'm actually going to use as a connector between what we are doing today and the rest of the city. So after the next episode of Altengrad, we should have like a very big chunk of the city finished, like a very big expansion of the city done. This part of the city is definitely something that I would consider to be like a bulk of the late 19th century expansion of the city, something like that. There's going to be a lot of like a 19th century buildings closer to the parliament building, because you can't have a parliament building right next to the edge of the city, next to the farm fields or something. So I will have to do some like boring expansion with some of these blocks in that direction of the city. I think I mentioned that in the previous episode, that I will have to do something like that. But even there, I will have some projects in mind. But this part of the city around the big park, that's where I would like to do, like I said, the bulk of the city. That's kind of where the centroid of the city is going to be, okay? So in the next episode, apart from that project that I don't want to really spoil right now, I'm going to have to do some expansion of some of these city blocks, something that I've done many times before in various parts of the city. So using some of these buildings that I already placed a couple of times before, I will have to just expand the city with them. So that is almost done, and that's probably all the plans for the next expansion of the city that I really wanted to mention. Next video from Aurelia is going to be next week, because I already have it finished. When it's going to be in the next episode from Altengrad, I'm not really sure, because I don't really have finished. I'm not really finished with the build, but it probably should be somewhere. Well, actually, no, I'm not really ready to do some estimates here. It might take a while. Maybe it's going to be soon, maybe not. Who knows? I'm kind of having a lot of work right now, so not exactly sure. I already started building it though, so that's nice. Anyway, almost done with this detailing. This is probably going to be my favorite part of this entire project, because this is where the transition is between the trench and the viaduct. Again, this is also where the junction is. One leg is going towards that tunnel entrance, which I haven't really done anything to. So it's just going to be like an unconnected track. But I can easily just connect it to the edge of the map and have it functional. Now, as you can see, this is the overall view of the city. And what we did today is not a very small part of the map, right? It's actually quite big. You can see a building down there more towards the river. That's actually a tram depot that I built in the live stream. You could have probably seen it. I didn't really want to feature it too much in today's video because, it's kind of there alone. I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to keep it there. Maybe not. Who knows? It's not really important. But that's going to be the part where I wanted to build some sort of industrial area. So maybe it's going to be fitting to have a tram depot there as well. As you can see, this is the finished trench. It's a bit of a shame. We will not see it in the cinematics because I wanted to cut it out. But it's a bit of a shame that the train's steam is cutting through whatever is on top of the railway. So I'm trying to not make you see when it's going underneath that bridge, even though you can kind of see it underneath the walkway. But the walkway is kind of thin, so it doesn't really matter too much. I really like this place. I actually really like how this place turned out. I think it was a very good decision to have a trench instead of lower terrain and like a viaduct on this railway, because it just created something that was not present in the city before. We haven't done that yet. So again, just some nice element that is kind of original in Altengrad. So that's always welcome. That's always nice to have in the city. Right now, these trains are going from the edge of the map. They're just transporting some tourists. There are no regular lines between different parts of the city, but that can obviously change in the near future. You can also see that there are lots of people already using this tram stop, going on the streets. So that's always nice to see. Anyway, guys, that's it for today's episode. I think I already said all the plans for the city, all the plans for the videos. So that's going to be it. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you liked today's video. If you did, then you can always put a thumbs up underneath it, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Thank you again. Take care. Goodbye.